Hey guys, Keith here. Okay, so today's video is an update on xLights covering versions 2018.17 through to 2018.22. A number of releases in a short period of time, largely due to a number of defects, some of which were my fault and some of which were not exactly, but yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter. So I wanted to go through and cover them. So we'll start with the changes to xLights and we'll start back in 17. So Kevin's been busy in continuing to enhance the warp effect. So let's quickly create just a simple sequence. If you remember rightly, the warp effect requires you to have some layers because the warp effect sits on top of an effect. So let's throw a butterfly down and let's grab the warp effect. And you can see it distorts the effect with a ripple on top. Now he's added some additional ones here. He's had the circular swirl. So if we look at the circular swirl, there it is there. So you can see that this one looks like it's coming out of the drain and then back into the drain. It's on constant. If you just want it to come in, then you would just do the in and it will just come up a bit slower because obviously it takes the entire duration of the effect to do that. Or you can do out, where it starts fully displayed and then slowly sort of distorts itself away down the drain. So that's it. Obviously you can, there are other options here. You can change whereabouts it does it on the screen and so forth. So there's lots of options there to play with, as you'd expect. The drop warp effect, we had water drops before, which is obviously multiple. But there is also just a drop. Oh, sorry, not drop. Single drop. There it is. Right, which puts one ripple in over the entire duration. So it just gives you that one. And then there's wavy. This one here, which kind of waves the image a little bit. This looks okay here on a model this dense. On a less dense model, this sometimes doesn't look like it's doing a hell of a lot, but you can see here it's sort of waving the thing around. Something like bars would probably be slightly more effective because you can see it's like waving a flag. So you could use a static flag or something and then use the wavy style. I'm pretty sure that, and so we'll probably come across it, but he also added the drop here, which is kind of, this is constant. We'll do out. So you can see that it sort of drips down. It does look better if you've got something that's not fighting against it. You can see it just melts away. Looks great with an image or some text. If you were to throw some text on here, we'll give it a bit of size. That's not enough. Let's go really big. You can see how the text melts away as a result of this over the course of that duration. And that's an out. In obviously it melts up, which is a little bit odd. I think most people will use that in the out mode. Looks pretty cool. So some really good stuff there from Kevin. Yeah. Okay. Display of percent location in Morph Assist. So you all would have known Morph. It's been around for a long time. And you've got this Morph Assist here, which you can go and grab the corners here and drag them across. But now you can see that as you drag, it now tells you what percentage of the distance you are across. Oh, well, there it is. Okay, so if you want that at 90% across, you can now see when it's 90% across and drop it. Just a little bit easier to do, to set up, complicated banding, etc. Just a little bit easier when you can see that. It doesn't always go to 0 at the edges. So that's that change there. Some jukebox configuration improvements. So if we go and we bring our jukebox window up, You can see here I have 3 effects here and I have nothing on layer 0. So if I come over here and start to add an effect in, I go to the matrix, you click on the drop down, it only shows layers 2 and 3. And the reason for that is there's no effects on layer 1, so why bother showing it? And then obviously it only shows the times where there are actually effects. So if I go back to layer 2, I get 2 different times for the 2 effects that are there. If I was to go back to my layout and if I was to add another model and I was to go and create, I'll just create a new sequence, it's just as easy. We'll throw something down. And if I was to come over here and do it again, you'll see that it's all populated. Notice only the matrix shows up here. Again, it's the only thing that has an effect on it. So therefore it doesn't make any sense to try and map to the single line. But if I drop a single line on here, click that, now the matrix and the single line. So basically I've tried to minimize the number of options in here to just the things that exist in your sequence. Try and make it a little bit easier to set up. And the ability to make black transparent in video pictures and matrix faces. So this is an interesting sort of idea. Again, we'll add our layers back because we're going to need them. Let's throw in a butterfly, just something that fills the screen up. And let's drag in a video. Let's drag in a video. I need to go and grab a video. Fortunately, I do have some. Browse. Desktop. Where are we? Motion loops. Okay, so here's a bunch of videos. Oh, it's not going to show any to me. I'll take this one here. Okay, so the video is obviously hiding all of the butterfly, but now under here in these options, let's get jukebox for a second. There is now another option called transparent black, and if I click on it, sorry, and then I start to lift it up a little bit, you can see that it's progressively, as I'm moving it to the right, making the black areas transparent. So now the video is letting the underlying effect underneath bleed through. Now, this is a little bit odd in the way this works. Basically, what it's doing is it's taking each pixel in the video and it's adding up the red, blue, and green channels. And if those red, green, and blue channels don't exceed 141, then it's letting the color from the underlying layer bleed through. So it lets you blend these videos in with your other things in interesting ways. At least I think it is. Now, I've added the same thing to the faces effect. It also, as you see here, has a transparent black. So if you're putting images on a matrix and those images have got a black background, you can make that black background on that face transparent and so overlay it on something. And I've done the same thing with the pictures effect. There is this transparent black as well, which lets you again put a picture over a picture and make the black areas of the picture transparent, so you don't have to go into a Photoshop or something and make the underlying layers transparent in order to have the blackness bleed through. Now, obviously, if you have black in your image, that doesn't really help you, but you'll have to still go back into Photoshop. But anyway, an interesting idea, I thought. Okay, adding support for your Falcon 48. It turns out when the Falcon 48 came out, the firmware that was on it treated version numbers and the like slightly differently. So when you did the upload to controller, outputs, Falcon, if you had an F48, it was treating the F48 like it was an F16 V2. And so it was applying a whole bunch of constraints, etc., that just didn't exist. So that's now all been fixed. So if you have an F48, you can actually upload to all 48 ports and it should work reasonably okay, I hope. Adding value curves to marquee. Yeah, not sure why this wasn't there before, but Clyde pointed it out, so just to address that, there's now value curves on all of these settings. So you can go in and make the thickness ramp up over time. Let's start at 0. And let's actually just make that a 5, 4 or something. So you can see how the thickness changes over time. So all of those parameters there, both in settings and position, have all been given value curves. I think I also added the wrap Y, which wasn't previously there. You could wrap X, but you couldn't wrap Y, so that's in place as well. So yeah, value curves all the way around your marquee, gives you a few more options. Fix unmask blend style so it doesn't turn black areas white. Yeah, this was interesting. I never really quite understood the way this worked. And if you had something here, and I've just picked circles just for the hell of it, and you were to put something like a pinwheel over the top, and you were to say that's an unmask, so one is unmask. What it was previously doing is it would draw white wherever there was blackness on the circles underneath, which never made any sense to me. So now the way it works, and that doesn't really, what's a better one to do? Let's do fire, same problem. Okay, so you can see how the pinwheel is unmasking the fire as it goes around. Now, previously what it would do is down here it would have unmasked and it would have looked red and yellow, but up the top here you would have seen this white pinwheel going around wherever there was actual blackness. I think this is the better way for unmask to work. So yeah. Oh, and obviously 2 is unmask works the same way. The fire there is unmasking the 3-color pinwheel, which is what you'd expect it to do. Okay, enhance submodel copy to prompt about overriding like name submodels. Okay, so so this is something that Scott introduced. So let's go into this model here. We're going to submodels. There aren't any submodels, so let's generate some. Okay, so we've got some submodels. Let's go and create another matrix. Let's go into the submodels there, and you can import them from a model. So I can go to the matrix here and import them, and it brings those submodels across into this model, which is kind of nice. That's been there for a little while now. Now, if I go back into this again and go into the submodels doc, and I do an import, and I try and import it again, it's not going to import it because they're all exactly the same. So what if I was to go into here and slightly change this? I don't know. And now we'll do an import from a model. Now what it's going to do is it's going to say, well, hang on a second, that submodel 3 is slightly different in the one that you want to import from. Do you want to override it? And if I say yes, submodel 3 has been recreated, and you can see that it's now back to how it was. So you can safely bring submodels between models, and if you happen to have something with a name clash, it's going to warn you and stop you doing anything silly, or at least allow you to overwrite it if that's what you want to do. So that's that. Thanks, Scott. Okay, 21 only had bug fixes. There was no new functionality in it, and I don't generally talk through bugs, although sometimes I do, like I did with the unmask, just because that had worked that way for so long, and I think people need to know its difference. Okay, check sequence to check for spurious use of canvas blend mode. So let's get rid of that. Let's go back and put the wave effect. You'll notice here that it's using the canvas mode up here. That's important because the warp effect doesn't work without canvas mode. But if I was to come over here to the video effect and turn canvas mode on, it won't make any difference. It'll still work fine. But what it does is it actually slows down the rendering significantly, particularly if you don't reset the panel when changing effects. And so you've done something, you've got the canvas mode on, and as you switch between things, this canvas mode gets duplicated all over the place, and it really slows down your rendering. So now if you do a check sequence, and yes, we've got some errors, it's going to give you these warnings. Okay, so here canvas mode is enabled on, in this case, it's on the video, on the matrix, starting at 13.9 seconds into the sequence. It's only a warning. It doesn't break anything. So therefore, anything that doesn't fundamentally fail is only considered a warning. So yeah, but obviously my picture effect, which doesn't actually have a picture effect file, is an error because that's not going to do anything, which doesn't make any sense. Okay, sorry, let's go back. Let's finish this off. Add a library of DMX fixtures. Okay, so there's a couple of changes actually in here. So if you do a download of a model, we've had the Boscoyo models there for some time. The beauty of being on the other side of the world from where the server is, it takes a little while to download everything. Come on. It's about now you start to think, oh, is it going to work? Okay, well. Oh, I think I double clicked it. That's why. Oh, there we are. Yeah, I must have double clicked it and it went into the wrong mode. Okay, so on top of the Boscoyo ones, I've now added a DMX fixture library. There's also a change in here. If James had some categories in here which had no elements inside it, the category titles now won't appear here until he actually adds at least one model inside it. But I've also now added this DMX fixture library. So these fixtures here are I'm just going to pick one randomly. So this one here happens to be a floodlight. It's a single pixel. But there's also, you know, moving channels and all sorts of things. And so what I've done is I've taken a whole bunch of information. Here's a moving head. If I insert that model, downloads it. Okay, now this is going to go off. All right. Sorry, that's because of what I did earlier. All right. So what it's done is it's come in and it's configured this model so it knows what the pan channel is, the red, green and blue channels, etc. So all of those things are pre-configured in this downloaded model. The other thing that's pre-configured in this downloaded model is all the names of the strands, etc. So you can see here it's gone and named all of the strands according to, the nodes according to what channel does what. Now, some of these models are quite strange. Some models have got, multiple color channels for different things, etc. And our DMX model doesn't handle all of those things well, and so it's not always the best way to do it, but we do bring them in and we do our best to configure them accordingly. Now, depending on the model, this one is one. So what this model here happens to have some channels with some predefined states. And so there's an effects channel here, and it's got some special modes that you can set. And so in the download here, it includes these states, and you can then use the state effect. And there's a video I made, oh God, it must be a year ago now, that you can download or have a look at on videos.xlights.org, where I talk about using the state effect with something like a moving head, and how you would then take advantage of these preset states to control your moving head, and in this case switch it into one of these effect modes, or do one of these reset actions on the pans and the tilts and so forth. So yeah, that's a whole bunch of libraries, about 4,500 of them in there. Admittedly, for the vast majority of our typical user base, they're not going to be that useful. You're not going to use it. But for those that might be in the theatre industry or something else, you may well be using one of those DMX fixtures, and getting a pre-configured model will help you considerably. Remove, I've already talked about that one, and add the custom Papagayo dictionary editor. So this is something that Scott's introduced in the latest release. Up in the tools menu, there's the user lyric dictionary. When you click on it, It's going to sit here and it's going to spin its wheels for a little while. Okay, damn it. Get rid of that. Down in the title bar here, it tells you it's actually loading the dictionary right now. So just like when you try to do a breakdown phrases, it takes a while to load. Well, it takes a while to load here as well. So this is where you can go in and you can edit the phonemes for any custom words. So you might have a word, Hullabalooza, I don't know how you spell it, okay, I'm pretty sure that's not a real word. So what we want to do is, I don't know, we'll take hullabaloo, yeah, we'll take that as a starting point and we will add that in here. So we've got hullabaloo, but we want hullabalooza, so we need a word that says, ends in ooza. I don't know, schmoozer. Is that a word? Schmooze. Okay, so it looks like we need to add a Z onto the end of this. I don't know, let's add teller. So ERO, maybe we need to add the ERO on the end as well. It's 0 actually. All right, and so that might be the phonemes for hullabalooza. And then when you click OK, it will save that into the customer dictionary. And if you go in and do a breakdown the words, it will find hullabalooza and obviously put those phonemes in. So yeah, something to make that a lot easier to do than previously. All right, let's flick across to xSchedule and look at a couple of changes there. How am I going to do this? I'm going to change show folders. Go to demo, select folder. All right. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly create a virtual matrix so we can visualize some data. We'll call it virtual matrix. That will do. Click OK. All right, so now I'm going to add a playlist. It's going to be an advanced playlist because I want to add in a new type here called microphone, which is going to run for 60 seconds. We'll pick a color that we want to set. So I don't know, something green looks nice. We can set the blend mode. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight the first, I don't know, 100 pixels with this color, and it's going to be based on the microphone. Now there's only one mode at the moment. I'll look at some others later. And we save that, and then if I play this, and if I start to talk, you can see how in real time as I talk, the color of the pixels. So if this were your pixels on your show and you had a microphone out there or you were doing a live thing, it's controlling the pixels and flashing them according to the volume of the sound. So it's a bit of an experimental concept. If people are interested in me taking that further, just looking to try and make xSchedule a little bit more interactive and allow you to encourage people to interact with your show and do things in more real time. So that's the new microphone playlist item in xSchedule. Now you can add several of them, I think. I must admit I'm not 100% sure how that would work, but probably. Activate and deactivate. So I'm not sure if people know this, but sitting in GitHub, in the xSchedule folder, yeah, is this text document called API documentation.txt, and basically it just lists all of the APIs, and there is an additional API that got added. Whoa, didn't want to do that. Okay. Okay, sorry, yeah, it's one of these, it's not one of the query ones. Okay, so there's now an API which is activate a specified schedule, and you give it a schedule name and the deactivate. And so you can actually, from an external program, tell the scheduler to basically toggle. So if I had a schedule, to basically toggle this enabled flag remotely, so you can enable and disable schedules from running from an external program if you so wanted to. While I'm on that, uh, previously I've said that you could add sunrise in here, well, either into here or here, it doesn't really matter, but I've now also allowed it to support sun up as well. So depending on which word you use, I know many people use sun up, but sundown might be more common. So yeah, just a couple of alternate words to use there. The other thing is where you've set this to be, fire every 30 minutes, and you start it at, I don't know, 1920. It used to be that every 30 minutes would still fire on the half hour and then on the hour. Now what it does is the 30 minutes is started from 1920. So it will start, I think it fires at 1920 and then 1950 and then 2020 and 2050 and so on. So you can create schedules that play every half hour, but interleaved with it, you could have another schedule that plays on the next 15 minutes, but every half hour, etc. So hopefully that makes it a little bit more flexible. So that's that one. Sun up and sun down, we talked about that. Optimizing schedule performance. I have made a couple of changes to the scheduler to try and lift the performance of the scheduler. There were some situations where it seemed to slow down and lag a little bit. So there's been some work done on that performance. And I also let you decide how crashes are handled, which sounds like a strange thing to do, but there's now an option in here where you can basically decide what it does. By default, xSchedule will, like xLights, prompt the user when it crashes. So a dialog will come up and it'll tell you where your crash logs are and all of that sort of stuff. But if you have a watchdog process or something running in the background that you have monitoring the scheduler, then when the scheduler dies, you really want it to die, because otherwise your watchdog's not going to realize that it's died and won't restart it. So you can now say, look, just silently exit after sending the crash log, which sends a crash log to us so that we can work out why it crashed, or you can silently exit without sending the crash log and keep it to yourself and hope that someone else reports it, because otherwise it's not going to get fixed. Anyway, so a couple of options. And that's all the changes to xSchedule. And then there was one change to xFade. Do I have xFade running here? So there's one change to xFade here. There's now this new advanced button here. So if you've hooked this up, and I haven't hooked this up to xLights, and I'm not going to for the demo because I don't really need to, and you would connect to xLights, and it would show you all of your effects, etc. Now here, of course, having me done that, this is all blank because I'm only running one copy of xLights. Let me run another copy. See, I shouldn't have done that. No. So we'll connect again. And this time, not settings, port B. Oh, the reason that happened was because I don't actually have a sequence open. And of course, xFade needs a sequence open to actually connect to. All right, so we've connected it now. And so the idea of the advance is that you prime it maybe by starting 50 on both xLights. And then as you click the advance button, you can see it's slid across and it selected effect 1. When I select this again, it activates 1 over here and fades across. When I click advance again, now it's on this side, so it advances to 2 and then fades across. Now when I click it again, it's going to advance to 2 here, and then it's going to fade across. And so if you're running a live show and you're going to have you know, your 2 sets of xLights, and you've set all your effects up in series, so that, you know, every second effect is here and every other effect is over here, you can then just click the advance button over and over again, and it will just progressively go through. Now, if you need to go back, you can go back, and when you click the advance, it's of course smart enough to realize, well, that's now where you're at, and continue to advance its way through. And when you get to the end, of course, it loops back around to number 1. So it lets you kind of put your show on rails and make it a lot easier to advance through all of the lighting effects that you want to push out. And that's it. A few releases, like I said, largely down to be honest, the microphone playlist item, a couple of implementation problems, as well as some library upgrades, etc. And just some human error has led to a bit of instability, which has driven so many releases in a couple of weeks. But I believe as at version 22, it's pretty stable right now. There's definitely no major problems. If you are on anything between 17, is it, hang on, yes, no, 17, yes. If you're on any release between 17 and 21, I strongly suggest you upgrade to 22. One of the side effects of that microphone thing was it led to a runaway memory consumption, which if you leave xSchedule or xLights open for any significant period of time, you'll find it consumes a massive amount of memory on your machine. So you definitely want to be upgrading to version 22. So hope you enjoy it, guys. Thanks a lot.